Hey guys, I hope everybody is having a fantastic day. Whether you're watching this video in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening, I am glad you are here. Today's video is going to be a little bit different, but we'll get started the same way. If this is your first time here or you've been by before and you haven't yet, please click the subscribe button below. It really helps me out. And if you hit the bell notification, you'll be notified when I upload new videos, when my live streams go live, and when I make community posts. And I really like engaging with people that watch the channels and also like knives. And if you feel so inclined, feel free to like the video, feel free to dislike the video, feel free to comment on the video. But today I'm not going to be talking about a knife or a class of knife. I was just going to talk about some general observations in the knife community and knife reviewers. What is a knife reviewer? How do we make decisions based on all the information on YouTube? And then finally conclude with why do I always end with choose debate over hate and why I feel that way. So the first thing I wanted to do, and this kind of came to be, I had posted a video a few days ago about a prototype that I had from a friend of mine, Jason Grant, who produced the Grant Gripper, and a good friend of mine in the community who I communicate with quite a bit, just mentioned a kind comment saying, be careful reviewing prototypes because we all know what happened. And I assumed that they were, and this is somebody that I care deeply about. This is no shade, but we were talking about what happened with the Field Duty 3.5. And I totally get that. But what it made me think about is, what responsibility do reviewers really have, and what should the gold standard of, for example, me, who's starting this out, trying to be a content creator and a knife observer, reviewer, and share things with you guys that I know are viable things to share, but I'm really showing you more than telling you. So keep in mind, I've got a squirrel brain, so it might jump around a bit. But really what I mean by that is, when I first got back into the knife community, I'll start with just a little analogy. When I first got back into the knife community, I was early into COVID. We were all kind of on lockdown, working from home. And I forget who showed up on my YouTube feed, but it was a knife review. And I had been into knives back in the day and had collected knives, didn't have much of a collection left because I'd gone through a divorce and there was nothing in there really worth salvaging because I wasn't deep into knife collecting and knife using and knife enjoying as I am now. But I started watching YouTube videos, and I started watching a young man by the name of Jared Neves Knives. I forget how many subscribers he had at the time, but it was not nearly where he is now. And I knew when I first started watching him that this kid, and I say kid with all affection, has mad charisma. I was on several of his lives where he was telling his life story about, some of the choices he'd made in the past, and his past when it comes to addiction mirrors my past very, very strongly. And I identified with him on a very personal level. So I continued to watch his content. As I got into his content, I'd get suggested videos from other reviewers. So I started to, what I hope you're all doing, is getting involved in the community. Going to different live streams, communicating with people in the streams, trying to get to know people. We figure out real quick what people's likes, dislikes are, their differences, their similarities, the little factions that they run in, and that's all great. That's how a healthy community works. So I turned to the community and started learning that addiction was something that a lot of the reviewers that I watch share in common with me. And I think that gives them, the reason I gravitate towards them, a sense of humility and true transparency that I truly respect. And plus, some of those live streams I know are very helpful to people. I know that sometimes people are alone, they're depressed, and things that have come up in other people's live streams have made a huge difference in their day and possibly their life. And that's what community does. It gives people safe haven out of the storm, right? So that was the squirrel brain rambling off, going back to what reviewers are, what I think they do, and how they affected me. So I was learning about knives again, starting to watch these reviews and seeing some knives that I thought were really, really cool. And when I first got back into knives, just like I'm sure 99% of the people out there, I was not buying expensive knives. I was buying very budget-oriented knives that I felt like were a good value. I still didn't really know why I needed knives at this point, because that's part of the addictive personality that parallels between what I used to do and what I do now. But anyways, knives are something that are want objects. They're rarely need objects. We might need one knife in our life, but the way that we go about getting knives, or at least I go about getting knives, or I watch reviews, I get caught up in some of the hype and the fanfare of some of these knives. I get to know and meet some of these different designers when I go to different blade shows, which I went to my first big blade show this past year, 2022, and have been thinking about nothing but how stoked I am for Blade Show 2023, because it is just wonderful, and I urge all y'all to go there. But I'll try to pull my squirrel brain back on track. So then I went to the Nashville Knife Show, a local show that is local to me, even though I don't live in Nashville, it's close, a couple of years in a row. And through those associations and those shows, I'd go to tables and I'd meet Brian Brown. I'd get to meet Ramon Chavez. I'd go talk to the guys at We. I'd talk to Eric at Spyderco. I'd talk to the Hinderer guys. I'd talk to, as much as this is going to be debate night, hey, I talked to Greg Medford. He was a nice guy to me. We didn't talk politics. We talked knives. So you learn, or I've learned, to kind of feel my way, or let's say I'm learning, because we're always students of the game of life and students of the game of knives. But I'm learning some of the personalities associated with some of the designs and the makers, so it makes it kind of cool. I say all that to share that's my experience. So every reviewer, every content creator, every one of us knife enthusiasts have different experiences, different things we like, different things we don't like. So what I think a reviewer's job is, and all I ever expect, is I don't expect a reviewer to tell me to buy this knife or to tell me not to buy this knife. I like when a reviewer presents me with a knife that I have, if I'm an informed consumer, which I am. I've read some blogs, I've read social media posts. Something got me interested in looking at the video where the knife that's being featured by the content creator is being shown. So I can be told that this is a very small fixed blade knife in Magna Cut with a 3/4 flat grind, that's super slicey, that has one of Kyle Coonley's laser edges on there. You can also purchase an Oak City leather sheath if you want to upgrade the Kydex that it comes with. So you have a couple of different sheaths, the pocket dropper or a Kydex sheath. But I've not put this knife through every possible scenario and then mirrored that to every possible use task that anyone that watches the videos could have, and somehow can determine if this knife or this knife is a fit for somebody. All I can do is share with you how I feel about the knife. And then it comes down to realistically looking for good info from reviewers, using a lot of different sources to get your reviews from, doing independent research on the websites, like go to the Google and Google the knife and see what other people are saying about it in forums. You're going to get some people that are, and you'll see, I mean, everybody has different experiences with the same knife. For example, I could think the Brian Brown Jaeger is one of my top 3 knives. there could be 20 people that watch this video that would not give 2 buckets of piss for a Brian Brown Jaeger. And sure they would, because they could sell it. So that was a bad analogy. But they wouldn't give half of what a Brian Brown Jaeger costs because they're not interested. They don't like the design. They don't like the fact that it's a frame lock. They don't like the fact that it has a coated blade. And that is okay, guys. That just means that this particular knife that I'm ranting about in my video, because I really like it, and I'm saying how well it makes me feel and how much I like it and how much the deep hollow grind and this little pokey tip make it pleasurable to open Amazon packages, and how if I needed to cut a string off one of my suits, I could easily do it if I was carrying the Brian Brown Jaeger. And I could talk about how this pocket clip is designed to go in and out of my khakis pretty easily, and it's a great carry knife for the office. But those are all my subjective insights. So whether I'm talking about a prototype knife, whether I'm talking about a Wii knife that's getting a lot of fanfare, whether I'm talking about a USA-made fixed blade that you really can't say much about, except this is Rex 45. I don't know the heat treat. It slices very, very well, and I could stick it through a car door. I am not a hard use guy, but that does not mean that I am not a knife lover that is much a part of the buying market of knives as any hard use user. I love them. They make me feel good. I use them every day. I carry them every day. Some days they get hard use. Some days they get carried around in my pocket. Some nights, almost every night when I'm watching YouTube and I'm hanging out with you guys in the chat, I've got knives all around me that I'm fidgeting with. And fidget's the wrong word, because when I fidget with a knife, I might take my Wicked Wax and I might take all my Hinders and treat the blades and buff them out real good. Just do maintenance on my knives while I'm flicking them, while I'm just kind of holding them, while I'm using them with my favorite mail that's not a knife. My favorite mail that I get is the coupon book. So when the coupon book comes in, I sit over an Amazon box and I'll take my knives out and I'll do paper cut therapy. I don't know if y'all have tried paper cut therapy, but it works very well. It is something that'll help you with stropping. It'll help you with sharpening. It'll help you appreciate your knives more. And then you can actually say, regardless of how many trees you chop down today, I use my shit too. So the only reason I say that is that's not hard use, but that's giving me enough information right there to know that A, Kind Coonley is a master sharpener. B, this MagnaCut seems to be treated pretty well. And C, I can make a mess in no time. So yeah, I use my knives, but I don't use my knives like the guy in Alaska who buys one knife a year because it's going to keep him alive during the winter when he's out in his self-sustaining cabin. And he's looking for a knife that, heaven forbid, he have to protect his family and jam it in the side of a bear's head. What's the best knife for his use? I guarantee you guys something. That fella who is a use your shit, hard user guy is not going to go to YouTube. He's not going to watch any of our reviews to make a decision on what knife he needs to survive in Alaska because he has unique use cases. So my point is, whether it's a fantastic reviewer, and every one of these reviewers are fantastic in their own way, but Stasa23, Jared Neves, Mattisfaction, Grumpy Grunt, G-Ball, Grateful Panic, Said Stevie. I'm going to leave out so many people. Eonan's Edge. All the guys and gals, Gideon's Edge, Not Your Average EDC, Women Carry Knives, Therapeutic Edge, Big Red. We'll all share our insights and try to share cool knives with you. Bees Blades, KC Knives Fast, Lefty EDC, how did I forget him? Backpack B, I mean, all of what I consider our tribe that's out there bringing a lot of these knives to our attention, I thank them all. But I totally appreciate whether it's lefties shitting on every knife. I love that. And I've bought a ton of knives that lefties shit on. I've also bought some knives that lefties talk fantastically about. And they're some of my favorite knives. The Chickadee and the Brian Brown Jaeger are two knives that I would say lefty, not because he told me to buy them, but because he showed me, and he showed authentic enthusiasm when he was enjoying the knives under the camera, that made me think, I like the look of that. I like the way Lefty seems to like it. And we know Lefty, he don't like shit. But that's just my point. And then you've got Stasa and Jared, guys that are actually testing, so we don't have to, going through hundreds, thousands of feet of rope, cardboard, reporting back to the community on the blades and how the steel held up and how they sharpen and what's good and what's bad about them. And guys, that is invaluable information. That is something that if steel and how you're going to use your knife is very important to you, or even partially important to you, I watch it because I find it fascinating. Those guys put knives through the paces. In 100% authentic honesty, I do not use knives that hard. I'm not going to be cutting 1,000 feet, although I'm cutting hundreds of feet because I've got a good friend, a gal pal of mine who I help cut down Amazon packages every Sunday, and she buys a lot of cool stuff, and I cut down a lot of cardboard. So I'm using my knives, but I'm not using them, or should I say I'm not noticing the details and the intricacies that people like Jared or like Stasa are going to notice, because they know a lot more about knives and what they're looking for in knives than I do. So guys, I say all this to summarize with this. Don't put too much credit or base a decision or hold a reviewer responsible for something that they're sharing with you that they took time to make about what they think about a knife. Now, there's a difference between sharing, being a knife reviewer, and being a salesperson, right? So if somebody, like you're watching a Blade HQ video or you're watching a Knife Center video, somebody who's constantly saying, go check out this knife, you need to buy this knife, you need to buy this knife, use your internal compass to see if that's someone that's subjectively talking about how knives make them feel, or if that's somebody who's looking to show the knives that they've got at Blade HQ, if I'm Blade HQ doing this, and then try to sell those that came in new from Knife Center because I'm showing them and talking about them. That's a little different. And I think we're all adults and we can all tell the difference. So let's end with hate and debate. Debate versus hate. There's way too much hate these days, guys. And I'm just now noticing my screen's off, and I'll tweak it up. And a lot of the arguments or the disagreements I see in the community come from trivial things. They can even come from big things, like people getting ripped off. But those things can all be resolved through talking to other community members, from talking to the person who you've got a problem with or who you feel has wronged you, before you put the person on blast or you spew out hateful comments or make them feel less than because they like something different than you like, because it goes back to the fact that we're all different. Knives are subjective. Likes and dislikes are subjective. Somebody who is number one motive for buying a knife and number one determinant's blade steel, and somebody whose number one determinant's deployment method and fidgetability, and they rarely cut anything, those two people could both be equal members of the community, and they are, and they're spending the same amount of money probably on knives if they're in our chat groups, and neither one of them should be made to feel less or greater than the other. They're both valid. My point is, I can learn from a steel guy because I don't know enough about steel. if I just say, oh, steel doesn't matter to me, screw that because I'm not using my stuff as hard, and what do I care if my 20 CV is not at this heat treat, right? That's hate. There's no need for that. That's just me being argumentative. Where if I go, interesting. So if I'm making these numbers up because obviously I don't know anything about it. If 20 CV is supposed to be heat treated at 59, what's the downside of my heat treat? Or what would the possible downfall for the maker be in trying to obtain that heat treat? And then I might learn that, well, then they might have more warranty issues or things like that. And I learned something, I understand. But that doesn't mean that the person that loves blade steel and heat treats the number one thing that's important to them is any less valid in why they choose a knife, and what they find important and what they want to talk about is the things like quirky designs and actions and things that I like on knives. So again, we're all in this together. We're all spinning on this big rock super fucking fast, right? So we all need to slow down, know that knife reviewers, content creators are doing us a service by showing us things we might not otherwise see. Use other sources when making decisions about what knife you're going to spend your hard-earned money on. And look out for the reviewers that you feel are authentic and that fit your style, that are kind of like your jam. And those are the ones that maybe you go to first before you check with others. But most importantly, guys, learn from people you disagree with. I don't want this to sound preachy, but simply all it means is look out for the guy on your left, look out for the guy on the right. If you don't understand or don't agree with somebody, you can call them out in a nice way to try to understand why they feel the way they do. Not because you're a nice person, because you are. And you'll feel better by being a nice person in the chats and doing that. But that's one reason to do it. But the other reason is you might learn another perspective. So again, we're all in it together. Move forward with love in your heart. Choose debate over hate every time. I'm so appreciative of every one of you. I love you all. I apologize for a rant video that's all over the place, but I'm going to upload it, and I hope somebody gets something valuable out of it. Till we meet again, peace.